I sure need music. All right, we're on.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to the second episode of the weekly here at Slow Guy in the Fast Ride. I am your host, Dan Cavallari, with my co-host,
Mark Still. Hello.
Hello. And we're back in the garage. It is finally winter here in Colorado. It's actually cold outside, so we're bundled up in the garage, a nice place to be right now. And you know, in our first episode of the weekly last week, we talked about the epic battle brewing between Mathieu van der Poel and Wout van Aert, and this week, I think Wout van Aert, it's safe to say, has fired the first shot in the great battle.
Yeah.
Tell us about what happened.
It's crazy. I mean, it was muddy, lovely Belgian conditions.
Perfect.
People crashing all over the place. Wout even crashed once, and mercifully close to the pits. Messed his bike up, got the pits. He won by 94 seconds.
Yeah, something crazy. Yeah.
Crazy. And I think the funny thing, not funny, but later, Van der Poel's father was, I guess, got a little flack for talking about these cyclocross only purists. They're going to have to do something different. They're not going to keep up with his son and Van Aert, who spend the rest of the year on the road. And I used to think those kids would get tired, but I don't think they get tired.
It's funny they're using the actual race seasons to train for the other race seasons now. It's unbelievable.
I was thinking the length of a cyclocross race is about like the amount of time we don't see in TV broadcasts, where everybody's trying to get the breakaway established.
Yeah.
And then they ride 6 more hours. And that's tough training to overcome if all you do cyclocross.
Yeah. Well, I think if anything, this indicates that we're in for a wonderful battle full of fireworks as time goes on. You know, if you've been watching Slow Guy in the Fast Ride at all this week or the last couple weeks, you probably saw that I did a video with Bernie Bernstein, who Bernie was hit by a car a couple of years ago, and just recently the court case wrapped up, and Bernie read a really powerful statement in court at the sentencing. So I did a great video. If you go to YouTube, the YouTube channel here at Slow Guy in the Fast Ride, you'll see that video, my interview with Bernie, and you could read the entire statement to the court in the Slow Guy in the Fast Ride newsletter that I just sent out last week. And I mention this because Bernie's kind of been all over the news recently. Outside Magazine had a piece on him just recently, and Velo News just also syndicated that. And I think it's an important piece for everybody to go take a look at, especially for all of us who are road users, whether you're on a bike or not. It's really important to understand just how big the consequences of our driving can be for not just the people that are on bicycles, but for all of us. So I would really encourage you guys to go watch the video interview I did with Bernie. And if you have questions for him, I'd love to answer them. By the way, if you're watching right now, you can ask us questions in real time, and we will happily answer them. Or they may be the correct answers. They may not be.
We'll make some things up. You know, on the Bernie piece, I watched that, and the thing that struck me personally was, as a cyclist, you think about these things, people on the road, but we're also drivers, and so we have to double down too. Just because we ride bikes doesn't make us safe drivers on our. So it's made me think a little more when I'm in the car.
I have a theory that there's no such thing as a good driver. There really isn't. I mean, just the very nature of driving is destructive, and it's dangerous for all users. So there's really no such thing. You can be a conscientious driver, but be honest with yourself. I mean, every time you drive, how many rules do you actually break? So just be more responsible for yourself and do what you can do to make the situation a little bit better, which is not going to solve the problem exactly, but lead by doing, I suppose.
And it won't help Bernie now, but he's out there telling the story and getting the message out. So.
And that's so important. I think the more we talk about this and the more we can convince others that this is a problem worth addressing, I think that's beneficial to all of us.
Agreed.
Back to the racing tip. It is crazy season for teams, for transfers, for teams just disappearing, changing names. And we've got a little bit of that. Quebec and Next Hash doesn't look bright for their future. Probably not going to be a team much longer. They were refused a World Tour license. They didn't even get a pro team license. And that's basically writing on the wall for the team, I think. And a few riders are going to be left without contracts, so I think we're going to see some moves pretty soon here. That just to me is really indicative of a problem in cycling in general. I think the constant shuffling of sponsorship and private money. I mean, how do you address that? How do you make it so that teams have a better shot of surviving year to year? I mean, I just don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the team owners and managers spend more of their time fundraising and working towards the next deal. Because even when they've got a deal, we've seen it time and time again, the company they have a deal with has problems.
Yeah.
They pull out mid-contract. It's not like it is in other professional sports, at least not in the U.S. I mean, NFL owners aren't worried about sponsors. Unfortunately, folks like voters and the managers of these teams, they're not billionaires.
Right.
And it's just tough. It's tough for us as fans. I've almost given up paying attention to everything because the riders are all over the place, sponsors are all over the place. I mean, Quick Step is what this year? They're a vinyl something or another this year?
Quick Step vinyl. And I'm pissed about that because I just learned how to say de Kooning, which is the worst word to have to say. It's frustrating, and I think the lesson here is Waters needs to become a billionaire by all the teams.
Why hadn't he thought of that?
Yeah, right. See,
let's ask him.
Simple solutions to simple problems.
Jonathan, come on down next Friday. We'll talk about it here in the garage.
You're always welcome, Mr. Waters. On the team tip, in the women's side, Human Powered Health is going to be a UCI World Team. Betsy Welch is reporting in Velo News, and that is exciting news. This is what the team that was formerly known as Rally Cycling. Big deal. Another team going to the UCI World Tour level. This is exciting. It's going to join 13 other teams for the 2022 roster for the UCI Women's World Teams. To me, that's also becoming it's almost more exciting on the women's side because in order to do that, you have to, I'm going to read this right from Betsy's article here, the squads must ensure financial backing for 4 years as well as guarantees of minimum salary, maternity benefits, and sick leave. I mean, I don't know enough about the intricacies of developing a team, but I wonder if it's the same thing on the men's side, and I doubt it.
No, I don't think they're worried about maternity leave. And
no.
men at three levels, right? World Tour, Pro Continental, and whatever the three top are have had minimum wages for years. We're just now getting to where women's team have minimum wages.
Yeah.
It's crazy what they've had to do as top-level, world-class athletes, supposedly professional, in the off-season just to support their racing habits.
Right.
So this is a great move. Trek has done this, has helped before with these things, equal prize money at cyclocross events.
Yep.
It's outstanding. I think it's wonderful.
I think so too, and I think again, we talked a little bit last week about in a lot of segments of cycling right now, women are really leading the way, particularly like gravel. I mean, gravel is really women-led. It's really great to see these women's teams creating structures that really just benefit the riders and in a positive way. And I think this is the way to go, and I think every team should have to do this. Women, men, whatever.
Women lead, not even Boonen or Cancellara went 75 miles off the front.
Right.
Like Lizzie did.
That was pretty stellar. If you haven't watched that, go back and watch it.
First ever women's Roubaix.
It was
fabulous.
Incredible. Moving on, in less chipper news, Mark Cavendish had a scary interaction this week. His family were at home and there was a home invasion. Some people came in, they stole some objects from Cavendish's home. He put out a statement saying, thank God we're okay, and that's the important thing. But also, if you have any information, let them know. They did catch a little bit of video, I guess, from like the surveillance, but they were wearing masks, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, clearly there was no danger. I mean, a professional cyclist is one of the most fearsome predators to ever raise fisticuffs. Things. So I'm sure Cavendish handled that.
I'm sure there was much slugging going on. Yeah, just flex the quads at him. Cyclists.
Don't you know who I am?
Cyclists.
And his wife's famous too. You think they'd know who they were? Maybe they didn't.
I'm sure they did.
Did it.
Yeah, I mean, I think
he signed his contract last week finally.
Finally, yes. Yeah. I mean, he's had a little bit of rough going recently. I mean, still recovering from injuries, and there's always sort of a little bit of drama at Quick Step. So it's nice to see that he's coming back. I mean, he was one of the most exciting riders last year.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
I got to say though, he might have should have walked away at the top.
You think so?
That was a pretty historic and storied season. And then he hits the 6 days and crashes, breaks himself. His home gets broken into. He can't get a contract. His team manager's a nut job.
I don't know. I'll disagree because, 5 years ago I would have agreed. But then, what was the year that he won, all the stages in a row and the green jersey and all that? And I thought, the year before that, I thought, oh, Cavendish, he's washed up. He's
It's not
he's
a
done.
washed up thing. I was as happy as anybody to see him do what he did at the Tour last year.
Sure.
But lightning can't strike that many times, and when that last time happened, he wasn't the age he is now. And
Seems to keep striking for him. I don't know.
but that would have been the crazy float to go off on last year.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we'll see what he puts up this year and see if he can go out even higher.
I love to see him break Merckx's record because, frankly, Merckx is who I've always revered has been a bit of a bonehead when it comes to Evenepoel. He can't seem to stop giving the poor kid grief.
Yeah, it's funny though. It seems like those two kind of have a love-hate relationship. Like in public, they'll always be friendly to each other and buddy. But man, sometimes there's shots across the bow.
I don't know. Lately, Merckx and Patrick Lefevre are kind of the same sort of nut jobs on.
Merckx had some nasty words for Remco Evenepoel recently,
That's
too.
what I'm saying. He's always picking on him.
Yeah.
And he's been picking on him for a while.
I mean, Merckx has never really been shy with his opinion, so.
No, but I mean, what's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point of, he made a mistake. He crashed hard. He came back.
Yeah.
I get all that. He's a kid.
Right.
I mean, give him some guidance. Don't
Right.
bang on him for it.
I don't know. I think for Merckx, that fiery attitude sort of works, right? Like they want that wily voice of the man, the best, right? Like, what does Merckx think? And I think he's basically delivering on that. And if we don't like what he has to hear, that doesn't mean it's any less valuable.
I guess.
Yeah.
He is Eddie.
He is Eddie. Moving on. So there's strangely been a lot happening in clothing this week. If you haven't already heard, RAPHA's CEO Simon Mottram has stepped aside after 17 years at the helm. I had the good fortune of hosting Simon Mottram on a podcast. Very pleasant gentleman, interesting past, and he's really run that ship through some bumpy waters over the years and really made it an incredibly successful business. But more importantly, RAPHA has really revolutionized what we wear as cyclists. I don't know about you, but I've got a container up here of old bike clothes, and if you go through that, some of the fashion sense there's a little questionable, as time goes on. And so RAPHA really simplified things and I think it really actually has helped cycling in a way that perhaps we don't often give it credit for, because it's so easy to pick at cyclists because of our silly clothes.
Bright colors.
And RAPHA kind of made cycling clothes a little bit cooler. A little bit.
And a little bit pretentious.
Yeah, for sure. And expensive.
A lot pretentious and expensive.
Yeah. Not all the impacts were positive, but I think there were a fair bit. And if you want an indication that it was a lasting impact, take a look at Trek's new outfits for next year. This is about as minimalist as it gets for a cycling kit.
Yeah.
And that is really following the trends of where cycling kit has been going. And RAPHA is in no small part responsible for that sort of honing of what cycling kits look like. To the point where we'll look at a bad kit and be like, wow, that's terrible.
Can't believe we rode that last year.
Exactly. It looks like something we rode 15 years ago. But again, you can see Trek-Segafredo's new minimalist look. What do you think of it?
I like it. I've always liked that better. I like these, like you've got put down here. I don't know if anybody can actually, you can see those. Yeah, I like the old school, much more sedate jerseys. I don't really care for the Mapei kits back in the day.
Right.
So I like this. Is great. I think they're probably happier. I mean, especially the Trek, because it's a majority that's white.
Right.
And they get hot when they're riding. I think that's brilliant. I mean, and RAPHA was involved with Team Sky for a bit.
Long time, yeah.
Yeah. So of course, Team Sky, marginal gains everything, and then everybody follows. So there's probably some tie in there. But no, I love the kit. I love the minimalist look. It's easy on the eyes, easy to find them when we're out looking.
Do you think it looks too much like other kits? I mean, that's one of the problems with the Peloton right now, is that everything sort of looks the same from each other.
Well, in years past, I don't know, probably not, because they're not busy. But this year, who knows? I mean, I haven't seen all the new kits for this year.
Fair enough. I mean,
luckily, the only thing I am, hopefully, everybody's excited about this. AG2R still got brown pants.
Thank God. Thank God for that. But I think, say what you will about Mapei and Jelly Belly, those were easy to pick out in the Peloton.
Yeah.
So that maybe that's the converse, the downside of this minimalist.
Yeah, well, over the last few years, I guess, they're not dark blue, black,
right,
dark red.
Right.
Because, I mean, between Movistar and Sky or Ineos or whatever they're called. I mean, there's just so many dark colors, you can't tell the difference.
Yeah. The trend seems to, go from team to team. It's like an infection through the peloton of the same colors and
well,
look.
there's not that many clothing companies either.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably as incestuous as the rest of the cycling world. And a lot of those designers all, work together.
Yeah.
And they can't help but have similar ideas, I guess.
EF always looks different.
How much, they always look different. You got to give them that. How much of that, though, is sponsor driven? So in other words, if a designer or team wants a minimalist look like that, does Trek have to buy in? Does Segafredo have to buy in and say, okay, we're going to have a small, easy look? Or no, we want the gaudy, big everything?
That's a good question. I don't know who the stakeholders are that come to the table for that. See that jargon I just threw in there? That was
Stakeholder?
Really good. Yeah. I'm not sure who's at the table for that. That'd be a good question. I think maybe I'll reach out and see. I'm sure it's got to go through many hands before it reaches this stage, and I'm sure all the brands have to be on board with it. In other kit news, now, if you go to eBay right now, there's tons of jerseys for sale. And if it's got tags on it, if it's new, that seems to bump the price up a little bit. Lachlan Morton has never done things like everybody else does.
Not at all.
And once again, he's back at it with something a little different. He's selling his Alt Tour jersey that he wore, the entire Alt Tour. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Lachlan Morton basically did the entire Tour de France route this year by himself. Without any of the support that teams get. Didn't really stop, except to sleep and pee and all that stuff, but it was a long effort. Did it by himself, and at one point I think he was riding in Birkenstocks,
his feet gave up in his normal cycling shoes with blisters, and he had some kind of, it was Birkenstock, or he cut the toes off of
something like that, yeah. So he's auctioning off his heavily used jersey that he rode the Alt Tour with, and it's to benefit Pedaling Minds as a charity. Obviously a good cause. Would you ever buy a used jersey? For the effort. Yeah. To support the organization. Yeah, I'd be up for something like that. Yeah. What would you do with it? Just hang it on the wall, I guess.
Well, first of all, I'm never going to have to worry about the choice of wearing it or not, because I'm sure it's the extra tiny size.
Yeah.
So I'd put it up somewhere, and maybe that story gains momentum, and maybe it can be auctioned again for another charity at some point.
Yeah.
Now, when you say the jersey, he had more than one, right? He didn't just wear the one jersey for 10 days.
He says this is the jersey I wore for the entirety of the Alt Tour.
God,
one jersey.
Smell.
I wonder. Do you think he had multiple chamois? I wouldn't bid on the chamois. Sorry, I love charity, but no.
I'm out when it comes to the chamois.
I think it's a cool thing.
I think it's fat, and he went and he's already done some other 1,000-mile race.
Yeah.
That's interesting too, because he's in his EF kit. Years ago, teams wouldn't have sanctioned that kind of thing.
No.
So I think it's great that a lot of the teams, or some of the teams, and certainly EF is at the lead of that, are doing some other events during the year. I know some of the grassroots racers don't like to see those kits show up at a local gravel race, but I do think it is a better way to bring notoriety to cycling in a positive way.
I agree, and I think it's also broadening what cycling teams are about. We talk about how stale road cycling has gotten, and how staid it is in its ways. And it's like, well, they're doing something new. They're doing something different.
Absolutely. Well, that answers the question right there.
Yeah.
I will not be paying $3,300 for that used jersey.
That's where the auction is at. With 4 days left right now, $3,300 is the current bid.
Yeah, I would if I could.
Yeah.
But
that's awesome. I think it would look cool hanging on the wall. I would, frame that.
What a story.
Yeah. It's battle worn. That's really great. Speaking of clothing, again, lots happening in clothing this week. I don't know why. For those of you who don't know, I also host the ROULEUR Tech podcast, and I recently spoke with some folks from ISADORE Clothing, which if you're in the U.S., you might not have heard of this company, but I also spoke with REVEL Bicycles, who you might have heard of. They're a Colorado-based company, and the whole notion of the podcast was, let's talk about sustainability in cycling. Is there such a thing? Are we really doing anything that is truly sustainable? Clothing in general tends to be a very wasteful industry. Cycling components come from stuff that's some pretty not environmentally friendly processes and materials. So I spoke with the folks from ISADORE and the folks from REVEL to talk a little bit about some of the things they're doing to make their businesses a little bit more eco-friendly. And really what I found most fascinating about the talk was the idea of a product life cycle, Where, it starts before you actually get the product. It's where are you sourcing the materials,
labor that goes into
labor that goes into it, and then you actually using that piece of material for years and years, and then just chucking it. Whereas some companies now are saying, send it back to us, we'll recycle it, we'll reuse it, we'll do whatever we can, we'll even fix it for you and send it back to you. There seems to be a whole new attitude toward how we're handling product life cycle, and I think that's pretty exciting. Long way to go in the bike world. I think we tend to think of ourselves as an environmentally friendly industry, and I don't really think we are.
The public thinks because we ride bikes that's somehow saving miles on cars, but generally we end up in the same place we start from.
Yeah.
But that's a beautiful approach to that.
Yeah, and REVEL's doing something really interesting. If you haven't heard of their wheels, right now they're doing gravel and mountain bike wheels, and their carbon is recyclable. They're not using a resin, they're using what's called fusion fiber. So when your carbon rim breaks or whatever, and you're ready to just chuck it, you can send it back to REVEL, and they'll actually make it into something else. Right now they're making tire levers and things like that, so it's totally recyclable. That's an interesting approach. Carbon is not exactly environmentally friendly, so I think this is a good way to address that end of life, end of product life cycle.
Like you said, it's early on in that. Will we all adopt that? Will we pay what I'm guessing is going to be slightly elevated prices to support that early on? I hope so.
Yeah.
I'd give it a shot.
I have 2 sets of REVEL wheels. They've been fantastic. I haven't gotten to the point where I've had to recycle them yet, so I can't speak to that process, but it's all really interesting and it's worth listening to. So I'll post all these links below so that you can listen to that podcast and all the other articles that we mentioned today. I will have linked below. Any final thoughts before we log off here?
No, crazy week. It's still, we're not really in racing season other than cyclocross.
Yeah.
I think some of the riders are still getting in trouble riding the wrong kit till the end of the year, which is a silly practice anyway. But I'm excited to see the racing coming. They're starting to announce their first races, so it's going to be good.
I agree, and it'd be interesting to see if we see any more teams change sponsors, if riders change teams. I think especially with Quebec and Next Hash going under, we might see some signings coming up. Yeah. So keep an eye on that, and we'll update you, as always, every week, every Friday right here, around 1:45, 2 o'clock MST.
Depending on our technical difficulties.
And please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that right down below. Give us a thumbs up. Leave some comments. We would love to hear from you. And please do join us for the live stream next week and ask questions in real time. We'd be happy to answer them. Yeah. Go to slowguyinthefastride.com. Sign up for the newsletter. That's it. The socials. At slowguyinthefastride on Instagram. At slowguyfastride on Twitter because they don't like my long name.
And I'm sure there's an email address. And message, email, tweet something at Dan if you have questions and don't want to do that live. We'd love to have them.
Perfect.
Cool.
Hey, thanks for coming down.
Yeah, good times.
All right. We'll catch you guys next time.